kids, we're going to talk this evening about boilers. You will recall back in May we discussed some of the safety aspects of operating a steam locomotive. But today we're going to get into the more physical aspects of the locomotive. And I feel that the boiler is probably the heart of any steam locomotive. Without a good, clean boiler, you have no operation. Without knowledge, you have no operation. Without knowing the components of a boiler, you have no operation. Even though you may never in your life make a boiler, you should know what's on the inside of one. You should know the function of each part and what they do. By knowing the function of each part of a boiler, it will make it easier for you to operate a boiler. Now, anybody can pull a switch or a gasoline throttle on a diesel-type locomotive and operate the brakes of a diesel or a diesel-electric locomotive. We can all do that. But on a steam locomotive, to be able to run a boiler is another bag of bees entirely. So I'm going to try to enlighten you on just what a boiler does, what it can do for you, and the function of each part. Now, we'll start. This is Ralph Richards' beautiful locomotive, and I'm going to move you a little bit there, Bruce.
Fine. Just so we don't go down the hill.
Okay. Back here we have the smoke, the steam, the firebox end of it. It consists of a front flue sheet, which is in about this position, the back head, which is here, the fire door, and if it's a coal burner, it will have grates. If it's an oil burner, it will have an oil pan. Or if it's a gas burner, which is propane, it will have an opening. It could be grates or anything open. So I'm not going to get into fuels today, no way. But I just wanted to bring that out to you. There is a little difference depending on what fuels you use. The function of the firebox is just what it says. We create a fire in it. The most important part of the firebox, to my way of thinking, is the crown sheet and the protection of it. We'll get to that later. But the fire in it is used to heat the water. The water is then heated to above 212 degrees Fahrenheit, where it is transformed into steam, and the steam is stored in the steam area, which is up through here, and is used at your beck and call when you open the throttle. So the firebox is, to you, one of the most important parts of a boiler for this reason. This is where you have to bring your pressure, your fire up, or let your fire go down. This is where you bring your pressures up or let your pressure go down. This is all where the operating aspects are of a boiler insofar as the amount of steam you need to move your train. If you're running a light train, which we do at meets, we run 1 or 2. If we're lucky, we got 3 cars on. If we have 2 or 4 passengers, you're lucky because you've got enough cars to do that. So usually at a meet, there is no problem in having to steam a boiler heavily. We keep a moderate fire in it and keep a low fire in it because you don't want to have the thing popping off all the time. A pop valve working all the time gets to be a nuisance. First of all, it's blowing in your face. Second of all, you can't hear what you're doing or thinking. You can't talk to anybody because of the noise involved. And also, it is a waste of energy and a waste of steam. So at steam meets, you will keep a moderate fire. If you're running on your own track, or if you take a locomotive, if you and your family take a locomotive, say to my track or the Bruce's or Bill Coster's, and you're the only one on it, you could hang 6, 7, 8, 10 cars behind your steamer. This, again, calls for a little bit more logical thought on your part. You've got a heavier load to move, don't you? So what you have to do is to bring your fire up more. You have to have a hotter fire if it's coal. You have to have, if it's oil, you've got to bring open up your valves so that you have a more intense heat. If it's propane, you have to open up your valves in order to get more heat out of it. This comes with experience. How often have we heard a fella has a track around his house of 200, 250 feet, and he's got 1 or 2 cars, and boy, he gets in a steam locomotive and he learns how to pull around the track 200 to 250 feet, and he can run and really enjoy himself. So he'll bring his engine to a place like this and say, "Hey Bruce, put some cars behind me and let's get some people in it. I've learned how to run this thing." So they put 12, 15 cars behind it, maybe put 8 or 10 or 12, 15 people in it, and he starts out and he goes 200 feet and he's out of steam. And he can't understand it. At home I can do it all right, why can't I do it here? Simply because he has never learned to bring his fire up with more intense heat. To move that kind of a load, you've got to make more steam. A lot more steam. On top of that, you've got to speed your pumps up, because if you're using more steam, you're using more water, you've got to supply your boiler with more water from the tender. So you've got to turn your pumps up, run your pumps faster if it's a steam pump, or if it's an injection type, you've got to open up your injection valves more. So this takes practice, and I am not going to try to right here today talk about that operation of the boiler, because you can learn it yourself. Someday, maybe in the next 6 or 8 months, we'll be to the point in this discussions where we're going to say, "Susie, let's get on my steamer, let's go. We'll take you out, you take it around the track."
Just so you put it back when you do it.
We take it around the track with 2 cars on it, then we'll put on 14 cars and see what you do with it. And then you'll learn the whole gamut that way. That's the best way to learn it. So the operation of the firebox, for you to be a successful engineer, is most important. Knowing your load, knowing your steam consumption, knowing how much your pumps are going to be taking out of your tender into here. Remember, every drop of water you pump out of here tends to cool your boiler. So you have to compensate for it by bringing up your fire even more, or else you're going to run out of steam. Okay, that's enough for the firebox. You'll learn more about that, and it's through practice and through operation. As I said before, your front flue sheet is your back flue sheet is right about here. This is filled here with flues. Now, I don't know how many flues are in here, but I could guess anywhere from 15 to 22. Is Ralph around here? Anyway, these are tubes that run from this flue sheet to this flue sheet. This most singular purpose of the flues is, number one, to remove the gases from the firebox to the smoke box out the stack. We've got to get rid of the gases. We've got to get rid of and keep it moving this way. This is that's the main purpose of the flues, to remove these gases. You say, well, they impart some heat to the water. True. About 15% of the heat transfer in these miniature locomotives is done through the flues 85% is done in the firebox. Okay, so we have the flues here, which are removing the gases from the firebox. Here we have the smoke box. The smoke box accumulates the smoke, the gases and whatnot, and through blowers or through the exhaust from each engine throws the gases out to the atmosphere. It also collects soot in here. After you have run an oil burner or a coal burner for some time, and you open up the door of the smoke box and look in there, you'll see a lot of soot. And it is the dirtiest part of the operation. The boiler, therefore, consists of smoke box, flue area, or water area, or water, hot water storage, and steam storage. This is where the steam is stored, which you're going to use, as I pointed out before, and the smoke box. On top of the boiler, we have the steam dome, which is the high point, and where usually the steam is taken from for the engines and for the manifold for the steam that we use for pumps and whatnot. The dry pipe is up and runs along through here, and we call it the dry pipe because we hope the steam is dry. We don't like to have too wet a steam coming into our engines. We don't like to have water in our steam, let's put it that way. We work with saturated steam, but we don't want water in our steam. So this is the steam dome. And usually the whistle is located near the steam dome or on a dry pipe, so that when we blow the whistle, we don't get a face full of water into our face, because we're almost sitting on top of the boiler with these little rascals. This is the sand dome. It does just that. All locomotives, I don't care whether it's diesel, electric, steam, or whatnot, all carry sand. The sand is used to improve traction when starting. You can see Ralph has built into his sand dome here a pipe coming down. He doesn't have it run all the way down, but usually they come right down in front of the drivers and to the rear of drivers in case they have to back up. And they can, at the will of the engineer, open a valve and sand will drop down onto the track. This, as I said, improves traction. The stack speaks for itself. It facilitates the movement of the gases from the firebox through the flues and out again. Now that briefly is the main parts of a boiler. We talked briefly last time about pumps. We're going to get into pumps later on because pumps are important for the operation of a boiler. You've got to keep, as I said before, water going. At the same amount of water you're consuming here, you've got to keep it coming from the tender. So let's talk a little bit about the maintenance of a boiler. I know all of you have seen at meets where a fellow will be running a coal burner or an oil burner. Not propane, because that's clean burning. The coal or oil. And he'll start off and he'll be running and having a grand old time, and then all of a sudden, about 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 hours later, you see him working his fire and trying to bring his fire up, and his pressure, he has a loss of pressure all the time. This is a clear indication that he's got dirty flues. So the first thing he'll do is clean the flues, which is what he should do. But I think many times they forget one important part to clean, and that is opening the firebox door and getting in there with a little wire brush and that little crown sheet that's in there. Now this is a very small one, but getting that crown sheet and the walls of it, that is also covered with soot. Now, I was told, and I don't want to be quoted on it, but I won't be too far off, that if you measure that soot in there, and you can take a toothpick, wet it, stick it in up against the crown sheet or the side, and pull it out, and you'll see about a 1/16 of an inch of soot stuck to that toothpick. This 1/16 of an inch soot is sufficient insulation to equal 1 inch of fiberglass. And 1 inch of fiberglass is a good insulating piece of material. So what have we done by operating? We've covered down this soot in there, and we've insulated the inside of our firebox, and we don't want that. So we got to get in there with a toothbrush or a little wire brush or something and get that insulation off of there, get that soot off of there. We've got to swab out the flues. And we've taken right down to bare metal about. If you clean your flues, clean your firebox, take a flashlight and lay it in your firebox door and look through this door here when it's open and look through your flues, they should look like a brand new shotgun. That's how clean they'd be. You're looking at shiny metal in there. And that's the way the flues should be. For good, efficient operation, good consumption of fuel, little consumption of fuel, efficient consumption of fuel, fast steaming, we've got to have clean, sootless flues and firebox. Okay. Now another part which is most important to you youngsters who are going to come up and have steam locomotives, because you're young yet, and that steam locomotive should run you 20 years, 25 years, if you take care of it. And you may wind up putting anywhere from 8,000 to 20,000 hours of operation on it. In order to do this, you have got to have the inside of the boiler clean. Now, if you took a pan of water and put it on the stove and put a lid on it, bring it up to boil, and let all the water boil out. Fill it up again to the same place, and do that again and again. After about 4 or 5 times, you're going to see a ring around the bathtub deal, which we hear so much about. That, kids, is calcium, it's magnesium, it's phosphates, and a lot of other gibberish. That same gibberish that we're talking about can very easily be deposited on your boiler, on your crown sheet, where 85% of your heat transfer is occurring. It can be all through there. If you don't do something about it, over a period of years, it builds up more and more and more. It goes from eggshell thickness up to this thick, and gets to the point with no matter how good a fire you have in here, no matter how clean a firebox you have, no matter how clean a flues you have, you can get no heat transfer, and you're lucky to get your boiler steamed up by just sitting. It just won't steam. The chances are you may have ruined your boiler because you can't clean it out at that stage. So we recommend the use of boiler compounds. And I have it all written down. I'm not going to, I'll give you copies of it. I didn't bring enough with me, but I gave some to Bruce Elder. But I'll be sure and bring copies of this to you so that you can use these compounds, learn how to mix it, learn how to put it in your tender, and learn how to protect the inside of your boiler. I'll guarantee you if you don't use it, you'll destroy your boiler in due time. Maybe not in 2 years, maybe not in 3 years. If you run it meats only, it may take 10 or 15 years. If you have track at home like the Hills have, or if your fathers are going to have put down some track and you're running several times a week, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and you are steaming pretty hard because over the years' time you're going to be building cars. The harder you steam, the more confident you got to be sure to be using these compound. We won't get into the chemical aspects of that right now, but it's important that you do it. You hear a lot of talk about other types of things. Some people will say, oh, I don't have to use compounds, I got a copper boiler and copper flues, and it won't rust. It's not a question of rust that we're talking about, it's a question of deposits on the flues and on the crown sheet and on the interior of the boiler. This heavy eggshell-like thing will get in there. So it's not rust. After every 300 hours of steaming, it's always best to take your blow-down valves off, take it off the locomotive, take your sight thing off here, take this off, open up all of the ports you can, take a stream of water, like hose water at 50 pounds pressure, hydrant water, and swab out the inside of your boiler. You will be surprised at the corruption that's coming out from your mud ring, which is down here in the boiler. The water coming out of there is full of, well, it looks like dirt. It looks like brown dirt. The brown comes from the compounds that you've been using, and it's sort of a rust color, and it'll just pour out of there. You keep swabbing, putting this jet of water in there, in and out, cleaning it out. That water will gradually get cleaner and cleaner, and after a while it'll look like the water you're putting in and that you can drink it. You know then that you have cleaned your boiler, that you have cleaned the sediments off of your flues and your crown sheet. The Dearborn's 253 powders, what it does basically is this. It takes the magnesium, calcium, and phosphates and puts them in suspension. And under heating of your locomotive, under steaming, the water is always circulating, and they finally wind up as a deposit on the mud ring where we blow them out daily. After the run, we open up the blow-down valve and blow out the corruption out of it. But this doesn't remove the corruption that is up and through here. This is why every 300 hours we should get in and swab it out with a jet of water.
Slow train.
So, our half hour is about up. The blow-down valve is most important. Usually blow-down valves are on both sides of an engine, over on the mud ring, over the mud ring. When you're finished with an operation, or after 2 hours of running, be sure you open them up and blow down to get rid of this mud, the solids that have been put in suspension. It is interesting also sometime, I bet you this is, if he's got water in his boiler, and we opened up the blow-down valve, the first little bit to come out would look like coffee from this operation. It would come out, and then it would be clear. This shows that the mud ring is collecting this corruption. We will take it from here down in Homestead on November the 7th, and we can borrow a locomotive. Maybe we can talk about pumps. We'll talk about some of the physical aspects of the locomotive, so that maybe by the February meet we can get into operating a steam locomotive. I think you'll be pretty well set for it, if you remember what I've said. Okay? That's it. Time for supper.